I remember when everything started getting crazy during COVID and the lines were out the door, and it was like all of a sudden, like, run-of-the-mill liberals were trying to buy guns, and the funniest thing about it was how many of them realized it wasn't easy. They're like, oh no,
especially
I can't buy
in California.
This. Yeah, I hear it's like nigh impossible. To buy a gun in California.
What's the process?
I hadn't tried because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it, but I know that for one, the stores many of them were closed, or I think you have to apply. But what many of us do is just we consider going to like my home state of Idaho or Nevada, and the process is a lot easier. And
then
just
you're able to bring it back to California?
Oh, sure. You just have to register the weapon once you get to California.
Oh, interesting. A lot of states do operate that like that. You know, if you already have it or if you bought it somewhere else legally, then they don't care if you have it.
Yeah.
So it is weird. And, you know, in that capacity, there are a lot of people who are staunchly like absolutist. And I have to say, from like a legal perspective, I don't see a way around this argument. Like, we talk about Michael Malice too much. Michael, we talk about you too much.
He's just got to look this guy up. Yeah, you guys have a real bromance going.
He's funny.
You know, no, it's because he's a smart guy, and he made a really good point. He said that the Constitution says I have a right to keep and bear arms, but every single cop in New York City would arrest me if I had a gun. And I'm like, I mean, the Constitution is the law of the land. It says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't say if you're mentally ill, you can't have a weapon. It doesn't say if you're a felon, you can't have a weapon. It literally is just verbatim, you can have a weapon.
Yeah, I get because it's the open carry or it's the concealed carry or open carry laws, right? So I guess
all of a sudden now there's like, look, New Jersey, you can't. You absolutely.
Well, you can own the weapon,
but you can't go anywhere with it. You can't bear it.
Well, and that's right. So that's the big question: is what does bear mean? Does it? Yeah, but I would think that bearing arms. I guess we'd have to look back at what did they mean by the word bearing. You know, bear arms back then.
It meant bear arms.
Show
like,
it.
You can kill a bear.
Like a wild animal.
Steal their arms. Yeah.
I think it's like if you're bare naked, that means it's obvious. Everyone can see it.
Bearing arms.
If you're baring your teeth, that means you're showing your teeth. So bearing arms would be like open carry, basically.
Well, that's what we think today in 2021 with that word. But I'd be curious to know what their definition of it was in 17.
You can look at a lot of the quotes from the founding fathers and like the Federalist Papers and things like that, and they're pretty much like everybody should have guns all the time.
Right.
People had artillery. You know, they had private artillery at their homes. There's like a funny meme about some. You know, the people. A lot of people on the left like to say, you know, the founding fathers didn't expect someone to have a semi-automatic, you know, whatever, AR-15 assault weapon or something, which assault weapon is meaningless, by the way. But and then there's this funny meme where it's like someone breaks into a guy's house and he pulls out his musket and fires. It goes across the street and hits a dog, ripping a hole in it because it's smoothbore. He runs upstairs and screams, "Tally ho, lads!" and then fires 2 massive artillery cannons. Like, no. People like this back in the day, they had private warships. Oh, yeah. Like, you could literally own your own battleship.
Well, you couldn't own a cannon.
You couldn't own a cannon?
No, you couldn't own a cannon. They actually had some, believe it or not, and I researched this extensively because I was always a real 2A extreme. I would say I was an extremist. I maybe just barely converted out of the extremism, but I used to say if the government can own it, I want to be able to own it.
Yes.
Right. But then I realized I wouldn't be able to own all the weapons the government has because I don't have enough money. And do I really want the people who are really rich to have the ability? Right. And then I said, okay, maybe I'm not so extreme after all because I don't know if I want the rich.
Some real class warfare there.
Right. I don't want them to own the nuke.
Right.
But
Which
then
they would.
Right. And
yeah,
then
sure.
Bill Gates or whoever.
Exactly.
Right. And then the rest of us can't. Right.
Prevents mercenary warfare in a lot of ways. Government oversight. Crazy as it is.
Yeah. So, you know, then I'm less extreme. But
you can own a cannon today.
No, you can't. You
can own a mini
kind
one.
Of a cannon? You can't.
Yeah.
Maybe what's the definition
I guess
of a cannon?
It depends.
But back then you couldn't have like an actual cannon. Just like they banned fully automatic rifles after the Valentine's Day massacres.
When was that? Other than
20s.
Oh, actually on Valentine's Day.
It was. Yeah, I think it was. It was a mob.
It was a mafia.
Yeah, mob hit. Went in and killed like 14 or 15.
I'm thinking
people, like that.
Maybe because we don't live on the frontier anymore, we don't need the full open bearing arms mentality.
I don't think the cannon thing is accurate. I mean, I did look it up, and there are people saying you could not, but privateers and corsairs existed. They
maybe if it was like a well-regulated militia could have a cannon.
No, but a privateer was like it literally means private ship. It's like privateer.
Pirate, yeah.
Yeah, they're not necessarily pirates, but they were responsible for a lot of the piracy because what would happen is with the UK, with the English Crown, for instance, they would issue letters of marque to a private warship or a private ship that had military capabilities. And then the letter of marque was basically like, if you screw with our enemies, then you're all good. And then what would happen is France would be like, they would go to the Britain and be like, your citizens are pirates and you're signing letters of marque. And then the Crown would be like, oh heavens, they're criminals. We had nothing to do with this. So it was like mercenary warfare essentially, but people had them. And
maybe it's only specific cases you could have the cannon. Like if you had a ship.
Maybe
that was it. But
sense.
you couldn't have one in your backyard or on your farm.
I know today that like Luke recently sent me I guess it was like an artillery Gatling gun of some sort. With like it's got 2 wheels and it's this massive thing.
He
and
sent you a Tommy gun? You're not allowed to have that.
Well, not full auto, but you can have a Tommy gun, yeah. But there's Gatling guns are legal. Gatling guns totally legal. So each crank is a trigger pull. So you're allowed to go. And so he's like showing me this like rotating 9mm or whatever with these huge magazines. He's like, I think you should get this. And I'm like, bro, I don't think I need. I don't think I need that.
Why not? You never know.
Stephen Crowder did like a big thing about this, about what the founding fathers thought and expected when it came to weapons and what were available at the time. And I guess a lot of people, these liberals who, interestingly now, are the ones who are very much so buying a lot of these weapons, that there were very serious technological advancements in terms of firearms back in the day. They just weren't common. So while people were using like flintlock pistols and muskets and stuff, I think there was one like he showed where it's got like 16 barrels and they were each loaded and you could like fire them all rapid in succession, and those were legal and allowed. It's just it was easier and cheaper to have the standard, single shot or whatever. So I guess it is an interesting argument about what they actually thought, but as far as I can tell, maybe by today's standards, the founding fathers would look and be like, "Oh heavens, people have like Gatling
Why didn't they
guns."
change this yet?
But hold on, that would apply to everything else too. Like, okay, well then you don't have free speech on social media. You're not allowed to use telephones because like the idea that you aren't allowed to have your First Amendment rights, your right to worship, because technology changed, well beyond what they expected to happen. Communications over the internet is not guaranteed, and I guess they're arguing that to a certain extent. But technology changes, but our rights change with them. So a better example is probably the Fourth Amendment. Metadata. If you have private information you do not expect people to see, then it is a violation of your rights to illegally search or seize your private information. There was no such thing as metadata back then. But we still, I think, for the most part, agree the NSA is bad. Spying on us and stealing our data is a violation of our right to be free from this intrusion. And so when it comes down to the Constitution, I actually think there are some things that we don't want even the state to use against its people or the people to have, because weapons are becoming extremely powerful, particularly directed energy weapons. Cat's out of the bag, though. There's 2 big points. The Constitution is there. And just because I might not agree with it, I don't feel like I have the right to take...
You have the right to amend it.
I have the right to express my opinion like I'm doing now. But I don't believe that these politicians who are passing these laws have a right to do that unless they amend the Constitution. So by all means, we can have a conversation. But if you don't get that 2/3 majority, then it should not be done.
The question is, should we amend it?
At this point, it doesn't matter.
What do you mean?
3D printed guns.
Like there's no stopping. But should we have the right to bear arms?
Yes.
Should everyone have the explicit right to walk around with the open carry weapon?
Yep.
Even in a city where you're packed together and it's like 20, 30 people sitting on a bus and everyone's got a handgun?
Yep.
Very polite.
Maybe
think
not
so?
a handgun.
Oh, yeah. I think so.
You think so?
Everything. Anything.
I
think you can have like...
Really?
What
about if a little kid had one?
Yep.
What about if a kid reached over and grabbed your gun or something?
No, that's theft.
But it was a kid. It didn't know any better. What would you
What?
do? What if like someone's 4-year-old reached over and tried to grab your gun?
Then take better care of your gun and make
Just
sure
out of
you
your
have
holster. Just reached
Make
over
sure
and
your
grabbed your
safety's on.
holster.
Then get
Make
out.
sure you're safe.
Then-
What would you
then-
do? Would you shoot a kid? Like, what do you do?
No. Wait.
What would some crazy person
You
do?
would
Get
grab
away
the
from my
kid's
gun?
arm. It's a 4-year-old, and you
What
just
if it's like
take
an
the gun.
11-year-old?
Then you grab. You can't overpower an 11-year-old, Ian.
Of course
let
you
me
could,
get to the
but, like,
point.
I'm just saying.
Maybe some
You're
people
getting
can't,
away
like
There's
from
in
the
reasons
point,
why you
though.
don't dangle
Listen,
candy in
I'm
front
not
of every
saying
kid.
I like the idea. I'm saying so long as the Constitution says you have the right to keep and bear arms, I can't tell someone they can't do it.
I know, but should we change the Constitution is my question. Like,
Do you think there should be training for guns? This is like one, maybe saying, okay, you can.
Yes, absolutely.
You can, but what about if we said, okay, you can bear it publicly as long as you've passed training courses?
I don't like that idea.
Why not?
I guess the challenge is, so long as the Constitution has it verbatim in there, I feel like it would be an authoritarian violation of other people's rights to supersede the supreme law of this land. That includes all of the amendments as well. Like Fifth Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Third. I don't think we have to worry about the Third Amendment because troops aren't going to be coming to our houses, but, whatever.
You don't know that. I mean, look what they're doing.
I know, for real.
I mean,
Third Amendment
right?
might become important. I used to actually think more along the lines of there's probably reasonable restrictions we can put in place. And, much like the First Amendment, I think there are some reasonable interpretations. Don't commit a crime. So with the First Amendment, we have a right to free speech, freedom of assembly, religion, the press, and a redress of grievances. And those are all fairly straightforward, and we know what they can do and what we can do. And if someone commits a crime by instructing or inciting violence, that is not protected. In fact, it says peaceably assemble. And so that I understand. That's not, in my opinion, a restriction on the First Amendment, which says speech and reason and peaceably assemble if you are committing a crime. There is a challenge because laws can be changed and other things can become crimes. They can say, okay, one of the arguments we have to be careful of, and this is why I'm still very much more absolute on free speech issues, not completely though, is they'll say, all right, if committing a crime is the threshold by which you don't have the right to say something, like telling someone to go commit harm or murder somebody,
Charles Manson, then
what if they pass a law saying hate speech is a crime, and now they can say, okay, well, now that offending someone is a crime, you can't cross the threshold of committing a crime. So it's very difficult. And that's why the Constitution exists for an important reason. The Founding Fathers were very concerned about tyranny. More so, the Bill of Rights was the anti-federalists who were concerned that centralization of federal authority would cause another situation like they had with the Crown. So we got these guaranteed rights. If you want them to change, we have an amendment process for this. So as much as I might be like, in Chicago, we got gun problems. In New York, we had, when we were talking with Luke about this, it was interesting because I said, bro, if you're in a cubicle apartment stacked on top of a bunch of concrete shoeboxes smelling like sour milk, and someone breaks in and you've got, like a .308 rifle, you're going to go through the walls. You might hit somebody. That's really bad. And Luke's instinctive reaction was maybe we ban, maybe we don't allow certain calibers. I was like, oh, there it is. It's exactly the logic people use, and I totally understand it. If you're in New York and someone tries robbing you and you pull out your gun, you can cause a lot of collateral damage because you'll probably miss. People don't realize even people who are good at shooting might be in an intense situation. They panic, they miss, they hit something, they hit somebody else. So naturally, people in big cities say, we want gun control laws. My problem is, okay, but you need to amend the Constitution. We can't just say the Constitution is meaningless because either it matters or it doesn't. And I do not believe that I have the authority, or any politician does, to be like, Constitution doesn't matter.
I guess that's why why the Constitution says anyone can do it, and then it's like a state by state or locality by locality thing. Because you don't want to ban the open right to carry in rural Idaho when just because in New York City is people are too close together.
Yeah, but we don't do that with free speech. We don't say, well, it's based on which city you live in. So, you should have the right to say what you want to say if you're in rural Idaho, but not if you're in New York City. I mean, so on that point, we don't have it municipality by municipality. We do it, it's a blanket free speech.
Maybe the issue is just, listen, you're responsible for whatever comes at the end of that barrel. And if you live in New York and you own a gun and you have it on you and you use it and whatever it hits, you're responsible for. The same is true for anywhere you live.
Yeah, but if I'm dead, I'm not going to care how responsible you were held to whatever it was, right? Like at that point, I've already been victimized, or I've already had to take the bullet, literally. And you maybe get punished, but what does that do to help me? And I think that's why, they make these laws, because they're trying to prevent from me ever having that situation. It's not about you won't get punished. It's about I won't be victimized.
It's an ethical conundrum, to say the least. And man, we just really love making sure everybody knows who Michael Malice is.
Yeah. I hope you talk about me as well, as much as you talk about him when I'm gone.
He's just got these really good points.
His beautiful eyes. That's what it is.
I'm going to be listening every day, and if I don't hear my name at least 3 times a show.
He said, my rights are not up to a vote. And I'm like, man, he's got
But they are, aren't they? You can vote to amend the Constitution and change people's rights.
So the issue is, yes, but I think the simple way to look at it is, so long as the Constitution guarantees your right to bear arms, to keep them, then it needs to be all the states coming together and changing that, and not some Rep. Kinzinger in Illinois being like, I think we should have expanded background checks banning the private sale of firearms.
So do you agree with banning certain weapons or all weapons from those who've committed?
Absolutely not.
So even those who've committed violent crime with weapons and then they get out of jail.
They pay their debt to society.
And so you think they should be allowed to own a weapon again?
Yes.
Even those who committed violent crime with a gun?
They're out of prison.
Yeah.
So they pay their debt to society.
Well, maybe.
They should be allowed to vote. They should
I agree. I
should be
agree
allowed.
that
They should get all of their rights reinstated upon
all of them,
completion.
including the
right to bear arms.
I don't know. I hadn't
Absolutely.
thought about that. I mean, I definitely think felons who've paid their price and have come out should have the right restored to vote and bear arms. But
And travel, everything.
Yeah, everything except I don't know about whether or not, domestic violence, especially guys that have committed acts of domestic violence, they go in, they come out, and they serve very little time. And then, so not everybody does pay a what I would consider a reasonable debt to society.
It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. I will take the liberty-based view that we must protect the rights of the individual and those who have done right by our system and our rules over fear that there may be a risk. Like we mentioned this the other day, I think it was Otto von Bismarck or whatever, who said it is better that 10 innocent people suffer than one guilty person escape.
Somebody who's suicidal, what do you think? Should they have the right to bear arms?
Yes.
Even if you know...
I'm in favor of assisted suicide.
Yeah, but this is different than assisted suicide. This is somebody who's, down. They're feeling very down. They're not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, right? They're feeling, and this is something that could be corrected, fixed, but not if they have a shotgun.
Not if they have a butter knife.
But I agree with you on physician-assisted suicide for sure. That has to happen.
You see the Dark Knight, the old Batman movie?
Yeah.
Joker made a pencil disappear. You know that scene?
No.
It's a very brutal scene where he goes into the mobsters and they're like, "What do you want?" He's like, "I'm going to show you. I'm doing a magic trick," and he slams the pencil. I'm going to make it disappear, and then he slams the guy's head into it. The pencil's gone. The reason I bring that up is like, if somebody is determined to cause themselves harm and end their life, what they need is help. And one of the reasons I'm in favor of assisted suicide is not because I'm like, yes, someone should just help them die. It's because they'll talk to somebody first. They'll go through a process to make sure it's actually something that should happen. And oftentimes, a lot of people might have a chronic disease or like cluster headaches where their life is just pure psychotic misery and agony, and they're desperate. Nothing will relieve their pain. Oftentimes, they're going through a period of depression, and it'll help them go through therapy as opposed to taking action on their own. The gun argument for suicide overlooks the fact that people will get drunk and then sink into a bathtub, or they'll take pills and then sink into a bathtub, drop a toaster in the bathtub, and a bunch of other really awful things.
Well, I don't know. I think, for a lot of people, they maybe want to end their life, but they want to do it quick and easy, and they can't fathom doing it in some, drawn out way that's going to cause a lot more pain or harm. They want something quick. That is the number one. Right, it does. And it is the number one, when people talk about all the gun violence, right, whenever they're mentioning all the gun violence, all these things, it's mostly suicide.
That's true.
And so that's, so maybe there should be some sort of provision where it is like a 7-year, that's what California does, 7 years. You can't own a weapon
if
after.
You've ever been suicidal or an attempt.
Right, for 7 years.
I think that's way too long. Way too long.
Yeah, it might be long. Yeah, that might be a bit
Prison's
long.
intense, though. The way our prison structure is it makes people radicalized.
Oh, absolutely.
For the most part. So a violent gun offender goes in there, comes out. There's a good chance that he or she is crazier than they were when they went in. So
the main issue with the suicide thing is, I'll put it this way: I would absolutely love it if there was a way to reasonably have someone who was suicidal not have access to a gun or something they could use to end their life. One of the reasons I'm in favor of assisted suicide is that we want to encourage as many people to go to a doctor and for therapy to talk about why they feel this way and determine if it actually is something they need. Most people probably...
Oh, so you mean you're for physician-assisted suicide even if the person's healthy and they want to end their life?
No. I'm saying it would encourage people who are suicidal to go to a doctor, and then the doctor would be like, no. You know what I mean?
I don't know unless they were led to believe that was an option. Like if I can go to my doctor and I could tell him I'm suicidal, I don't want to do this anymore, help me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's different than like...
Well, so there would be criteria, but I do believe there are a lot of people who would be like, my life sucks, I'm miserable, and I think I might qualify. They'll go to a doctor. Whatever we can do...
They'd have to be crazy and suicidal, I think.
I think it may not be a perfect solution, but whatever we can do to encourage people who are suffering to go to a doctor in any capacity.
Right.
So I would love it if we could be like, okay,
But they can't if they're dead because they've shot themselves because we let them have a gun.
Then how do you take away their gun before they were suicidal? Before you knew they were suicidal?
Well, you didn't, right? So they had the option at that point, and so we're not. It's definitely not going to cure the problem.
How
right?
do you know
Some
they're
people-
suicidal?
Well, because people usually reach out at some point prior to that point. I mean, most people don't really want to end their life, and so they go through a process of reaching out before they get to that point. So
Then-
people around them know, and then they can say, "We're going to take the weapon."
You're talking just if they've attempted suicide.
No, or they've reached out and said, "I'm not,"
Oh, okay.
because they go through a process
So
prior
here-
to even hitting that point. Usually,
There was a story. I think this was in Maryland. I'm not sure. It might have been Baltimore area, where there was a guy. He was in his 60s, and I could be getting some of the details wrong, but the gist of it was someone in his life, an ex or a family member, was feuding with him. Told the police that he was unstable and unwell and armed, and so they served a red flag warrant. The police showed up to his house, and he had no idea why they were there. They knock on the door, and he answers the door, and he's got his gun, which he's legally allowed to do. And they said, "We are taking your gun," and he doesn't know why. And he said, "The hell you are," and he fought with them, and they shot and killed him. The problem with trying to seize someone's weapons because we think they might be suicidal is that we create conflicts where someone with a gun is now going to be engaging with police. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.